Good afternoon. It's Roger Gilbert here from Milling and Grain magazine, an international aquafeed magazine, and also international pet food magazine. We're in Atlanta, Georgia, attending the IPPE show, which is the first time in 2 years, and I have the pleasure of welcoming on our stand Erik Visser, and he's the CEO of Hamlet Protein. Earlier this year, Erik announced a New Year message summarizing the feed and livestock industry globally to his on his LinkedIn site, which you can see. But I just want to invite him to follow up on those messages that he had. The most important message that he had in that New Year's message. Erik, welcome.
Thank you very much, Roger. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. And what was the key message you had this year for your customers and others?
Well, the thing is, you try to summarize your message across species and geographies. That's always a challenge. But volatility is going to be around still this year. We see inflationary pressure, which will drive feed costs up. And that, of course, will have a direct impact on the profitability of our farmers and producers, which will then in turn influence the decision-making process on what to include in their feed rations.
And globally, what do you see as the driver of that? What is the most significant points? Is it economics? Is it the pandemic? Or is it African swine fever as an example?
Well, they all come into play, and of course it depends per geography what's most impactful. So we've seen a high influence of the supply chain costs, the lack of availability of sea freight, and the skyrocketing prices definitely impact the cost of animal nutrition. Having said that, we also see some lower stock positions on the agricultural commodities. We've seen several commodities rise in price in 2021, and some of them will continue in 2022. Then African swine fever also takes care of a disruption in the market, but that disruption is felt differently in different countries.
And do you see a brighter signs ahead, towards the end of the year possibly?
Well, I'm always an optimist, and I think we are producing feed for food, and in the end, the world population continues to grow. The world population is more conscious about what they eat and where it comes from. They're more conscious about that food being produced without the use of antibiotics, and that brings a lot of opportunities for the feed industry. So I think all in all, profitability levels of the producer is a reason for concern. You want farmers to earn a decent living, and if we can take care of that throughout the supply chain, then the opportunities to do so in a sustainable manner and driving non-antibiotic feed formulations, I think that is where we as feed industry have a lot of opportunity. So the underlying market drivers are definitely very strong and will carry us to growth in the future. However, that growth might be interrupted by certain supply chain issues or certain issues on animal diseases, geopolitical issues that will vary from region to region.
And antibiotics, of course, we've had a 2-part series on the importance of antibiotic resistance and or bacteria. So do you see that as an issue being properly addressed, or do you think we have to focus on it a little bit more?
Well, the thing is, you can see the demand is coming from consumers. They no longer want animal protein that's being produced with the use of medication. However, producers are only responding to the broader extent once that is converted into government regulation. So you always have some front runners that will change formulation to produce without antibiotics or medication, because they attend a niche market. But in general terms, it is important to see regulation change. That's what we've seen, for example, last year in China, where the Chinese government banned the use of antibiotics, which then drove a huge increase in the demand for non-antibiotic feed additives to drive gut health.
Yeah. And do you see that happening elsewhere, or do you believe it has to happen elsewhere?
No, that's a trend that we see everywhere around the world. And it's just a matter of time for more countries follow, but you have large blocks already following suit. So that is an unstoppable trend that will drive the way how we formulate diets, because we don't see a single product replacing antibiotics. It will always be a multifaceted approach. And in that approach, there's room for different feed additives to create a healthy gut.
And is there more we should be doing in getting these messages across to government?
Well, I think there's always different interests in the market, because you also have people that produce antibiotics and they want to defend their market share. So there's always different lobbying going on. But that trend to increase sustainability and lower use of medication, that is an unstoppable trend that markets are quickly following. And if the larger export markets no longer allow the use of antibiotics as growth promoters, that use will inevitably die down and lead to the search for alternatives. So I think that road depends on where you are in the feed industry. From our sense, where we provide vegetable protein specialties to drive health through nutrition, we see this as a good development, and we believe that development will go on to be stronger in the coming years.
Obviously, there is a place for antibiotics in animal health.
Of course there is, yeah, and antibiotics will never go away, so there will always be medication, but we're talking about the preventive use of medication to prevent animals from getting sick, but the curative aspect, that will always be around.
Yeah, and gut health, final question about gut health. Should we be focusing more on gut health in our management of livestock diets?
Well, I think farm management, biosecurity measures, these are two elements also that come into play. But definitely gut health is an important element, and we see that the gut is the most important indicator of the performance of the animal. So driving gut health, and for us, especially in early life stage where you have an immature gut, is a direct impact on the performance of the animal throughout the life cycle.
Yeah. Erik, thank you very much for spending time with us, and all the best.
Thank you very much, Roger. My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.